So tell me the story.
It's brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. I always like to start off and say that in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to autonomous and automated vehicles, being around since 2014 actually makes us now quite an old company in the in the grand scheme of things.
So welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. I mean, what the team at EasyMile are doing is really incredibly exciting. I mean, the idea of autonomous vehicles really does seem like a taste of the future. And I know all of our listeners will be intrigued by your solutions and inspired by your entrepreneurial spirit. So let's just dive right in. So, my first question to you is, can you give us a bit of background into how and why the company was founded? Tell us a little bit about, Easy Mile's journey since that point as well, because I think it was founded relatively recently in 2014, but you've covered quite some ground in that time. So tell me the story.
It's brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. I always like to start off and say that in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to autonomous and automated vehicles, being around since 2014 actually makes us now quite an old company in the in the grand scheme
True.
of things. But the story is actually quite funny. Our CEO, a guy called Gilbert Garnier, was rock climbing after quite a hiatus from previous ventures, and he just thought, you know what, I'm really up for a new challenge. And then he got a call from a contact group, a bunch of engineers all got together, and they were developing this driverless software for passenger shuttles. And I think he was personally touched upon the fact that he lived in Singapore with some just horrendous congestion within the cities. And the phrase that always kind of captured my imagination was he wanted to reclaim the cities. He wanted to reclaim these cities just from all the congestion, the pollution, all of that type of stuff. And that I think really sparked his interest. And the rest, as they say, is complete history. So 2014 is when we were first founded, and our company headquarters is in Toulouse, France. I usually follow that up with some horrendous joke about how there's nothing to lose about being set up in France, but no, to be in Toulouse is absolutely fantastic because it's a great hotbed of innovation. We're pretty much next door to Airbus, and being in the same kind of facilities and same kind of environment as them is fantastic. And we also initially set up our first office in Singapore, where we share quite a lot of the research and development with our technology between there and Toulouse. And then in 2015, we started running with passenger shuttles in Switzerland upon a campus. And then in 2018, we made that transition where we realized that the code, the development, and everything that we're doing for passenger vehicles is actually extremely applicable for industry. So we partnered with a company called TLD, and in 2018, we automated a tow tractor. And then our first deployment was at the Stellantis factory in Sochaux, France, where we're doing indoor and outdoor material handling there. In 2019, we then moved to our first airport deployment in Narita, Japan, with Japan Airlines. In 2020, we won the IFOY award for the International Intralogistics Forklift Truck of the Year, which is pretty
Wow.
something we're pretty proud of. And today, this now in 2021, actually in April of this year, we just raised 66 million US dollars as part of our last fundraising round. So it's been a hell of a few years for sure. But yeah, that's kind of the brief overview of where we are and how we are today.
I always love getting to know a brand through their story. And congratulations on all of those milestones, right? They're really, really important to a company, to the culture, to the team. But you started off on a mountain. You started
Yeah.
off rock climbing. And the idea, the founder started off rock climbing, and look what it has snowballed into. And, and I know my audience loves hearing how you go from rock climbing to 66 million in funding rounds. I mean, just incredible. So let's talk about you sort of mentioned some of the things that you've done over the years, but let's talk about what exactly it is that you do. So describe it to me, what exactly you do.
Sure. So the most important thing to realize that EasyMile does is by heart, we are a software company. And what that means is we work in tandem with leading OEMs, leading manufacturers, in order to bring what we do best on the technology side and what they do best on the vehicle manufacturing side. And together, we work and produce automated vehicles. So on the passenger side of the business, we partner with a company called Ligier. They're a well-known European OEM. They actually used to be a Formula One racing team. So I always like to say that the innovation and the technology came from Ligier, not necessarily the speed of the vehicles that we produce these days, but definitely that mindset is where we started with Ligier. And on the autonomous tow tractor side, we work with TLD, who are actually one of the leaders in ground support equipment. So you usually see all of their products at airports, whether it's the tow tractors, the airport, the actual airplane tugs, all of those type of things. So it really is a perfect relationship where they do what they do best in the vehicle manufacturing, and we can focus purely on the software, work together, and create autonomous vehicles.
That is amazing. And, I know the first question on everybody's lips will be, how does it work? I mean, how can you possibly have driverless, completely autonomous vehicles? It's almost futuristic, right? You think about the Jetsons I mean, at least when I was younger. I don't know about you, but when I was younger. And, a lot of times when we're talking about this kind of technology, people think that it's far in the future, but it's here and it's now. So talk about that. How does it work? And what does that look like?
I think both yes and no. So the concept of having individual cars zipping up and down the highways, fully autonomous, yes, is still years away to have that full, almost utopia of autonomous driving. The interesting thing is, in the right environments, in the right use cases, autonomy is absolutely here. Within industries, we've had AGVs for years running around warehouses and industrial sites. And it's just the concept of bringing where the technology is into the right environments today is a perfect match made in heaven. So our vehicles are basically armed with an army of sensors, creating a real live 360-degree view of their environments. And they work by pre-mapping the entire environment where they're in. So that essentially means the vehicles are driven manually ahead of time. They download their entire route, their entire environment, and simply for us, running in autonomous mode is overlapping what we've previously seen to
Right.
what we're seeing in real time. And provided, of course, those two things match up, we have autonomous driving. The interesting things can be set. So, deviating. So, say, for example, the route was blocked, we can go around it if it's safe to do so. I
Mhm.
always like to describe that us running in autonomous mode is essentially us having running on predefined railroad tracks.
Mm.
Ahead of time, our engineers lay down the tracks and they can sometimes lay down passing sections. But it really is just as simple as that. We use everything in our environment in order to have that autonomous driving.
Amazing. And I know you're going to paint us a picture a little bit later of, how it's working specifically for one of your customers. But I just keep thinking about the efficiency of what this brings to an organization. And we're going to get to safety in just a second. But the efficiency, because if you think about it, right? People walking to and from buildings, right? You've got one building that's producing, one product, and then you've got another building that's producing another product. And the time that humans are taking to go between and potentially have to drive something because potentially that product weighs a lot and can't be carried with them, right? And maybe it's one product at a time. So I'm just really thinking and picturing the efficiencies that your solution would bring to a company that has, that sort of dynamic.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. One great example would be taking forklift journeys. So today, for example, on warehouses, you load up a forklift and then you drive that pallet, that delivery
Yes.
to its end location. And that's just a one-to-one type process that could be going on all day. The great news of having the Tracked Easy, and which is essentially a tow tractor, which you can load up like a train, is you have that forklift operation, but then you're putting that load onto essentially a train, and then they all go to that one location. So you're actually saving time on the loading and then on the delivery with this autonomous tow tractor. But then the other use cases would be replacing existing tow tractor type operations. And we'll come on and talk about the existing use cases that we've got later on. But we really are replacing existing tow tractor operations as well as forklift operations with our autonomous outdoor AGV.
Amazing, amazing. And I remember because I used to work in a warehouse, right? And we used to handle elevators, right? And so having to take elevators on and off
Yeah.
trucks, the amount of time that it took, I think it took a whole shift for it to be moved and things like that. So I can only imagine the time savings. But let's talk about safety, right? Because, now you're talking about forklifts. You're talking about areas where there are human beings working. And I'm sure that this is definitely something that everybody's thinking around about, right? How does that work, right? The next question is, but is it safe? So safety must be, it almost must be your biggest challenge, both in technology, but maybe in sales. Is that something that comes up a lot for you? And what would you say to those that have that question around safety?
So, absolutely, safety is the forefront of absolutely everything that we do. I always like to say that we at EasyMile don't necessarily set safety as a goal. You have so many companies say safety is our number one goal. I like to argue that actually it's an outcome. Just look at it simply like that, of strict processes and well-informed employees on our technology. So that's definitely ingrained to every single member of our team, whether it be around the world. Um, so that's obviously the most important thing. Yes, the safety is quite an intense topic because you can get down into so many different rabbit holes, whether it's from cybersecurity to the safety of where the vehicles are deployed to their absolute operation and us as a business. For us, it's a very pragmatic step by step approach. So, for any site where we're deployed, there's two major documents that we create. The first one's a site visit report. So, for example, we have a client reach out to us and say, "Hey, we're interested in deploying this solution. I think it makes sense. Come onto our site, or here's a bunch of videos of the process. Um, tell us more." So we'll create a site visit report, which is essentially picks up some of the major risks and outlines some of the mitigations that we're trying to in place. I'll give you one example. Recently, one of the routes has a four-way intersection that crosses a public road.
Huh.
So us trying to figure out ways to safely cross that road with railroad crossings, all of that type of stuff, are some of the things that we discuss in the site visit report. That then evolves to say that all parties agree that we want to move forward to an actual deployment to what we call a site assessment report. And sometimes it can be over 200 pages worth of just everything from actually shipping the vehicles to the actual deployment to the training. Absolutely everything that we do with our clients is outlined in this document, which carries with that all of the safety pieces. I will say that we are the only autonomous vehicle company within this space, passenger transportation and material handling, that is ISO 2015 certified,
Nice.
something that we're unbelievably proud of to achieve. And that
Yeah.
really does go back to the fact that it is ingrained into absolutely everything that we do.
Yeah.
The vehicles all run on the same type of principle. So we have lidars, odometry, IMU, stereo cameras, GPS, and probably some more that again, I'm venturing into dangerous territory. I'm not an engineer by trade. I work with people much smarter than me, that have that knowledge. But essentially, we fuse all of that information together and ensure that everything that we do comes back to that safety approach.
Amazing, amazing. And because you are ISO certified, that to me alone means that that's something that is obviously top of mind for everybody at EasyMile and top of mind for your customers and the industry as a whole. Right? It's not just about you. It's not just about your customers. It's about their team members, but it's about the industry as well. Because the more technology that we implement and autonomous and automated that we implement into the industry, we want to make sure that everybody is definitely, definitely well protected. So you operate a couple of key vehicle solutions, which we've touched on. So tell us a little bit more about those because they're so impressive. I know that the Easy 10 is the most deployed autonomous shuttle in the world, which is just incredible. And maybe touch on because I know you name them different things in different parts of the world, and I'd love to know a little bit more about that. So exactly what is each vehicle and where should they be deployed and why? So if I'm sitting in the audience and I'm thinking that, this could be a really good solution for us, what could that look like for me or what questions should I be asking myself?
Absolutely. So, firstly, on the passenger side of the business, you're absolutely right. The Easy 10 really is one of our two main flagship products today. You're absolutely right. The most deployed autonomous shuttle in the world, and something we actually hold 60% of the global market share
Wow.
for autonomous shuttles such as that. So, something we're very proud of. Yeah, I love the names and the innovative ways that clients come to name them. I will say our project in Canada with a company called Pacific Western Transportation named the shuttle Ella, standing for
Oh,
electric and autonomous, which I thought was genius.
I thought
And
that was
uh,
cool. Yeah.
and my first project here in the US was was in Arlington, Texas, and they named the shuttle Milo for Mile Zero. So yes,
Oh,
something that we definitely need to transition into the Tracked Easy for industry to come up with some good names. So we definitely need to put a campaign out to get some good names for the vehicles for sure. But yes, very quickly to touch on the Easy 10. Um, it's essentially that ideal first and last mile connectivity type vehicle. So, we're not going to be going long distances. We're essentially connecting parking lots to main buildings. So, within industrial sites, it's a great use case considering I've been to quite a few locations where it's a bit of a walk from the visitor parking directly to the assembly line, for
yeah.
example. But other locations such as hospitals, resorts, universities, business parks, you name it, that first and last mile connectivity for the vehicle makes sense, and it's a fully electric pieces. So that's great for that. The Tracked Easy, definitely within the material handling space, is our answer to support Industry 4.0. It is autonomous, like we're saying, so it's fully driverless, but it is electric as well. And that's something that's so at the core of everything that our business has. It's that push for the zero emissions type vehicles and that push towards electric, which I will say has been coming up more and more in
Hmm.
conversations. Obviously, I started my career in Europe where I always feel like that was 100% that electric move within city centers, for example, was something so important. And now I'm starting to definitely hear that being mentioned much more, whether it in city centers or within industry as well. That focus on electric has definitely come up. And the reality is, the capabilities of electric now is so much better than they have been. Our
Hmm.
tow tractor can tow up to 25 tons or 55,000 pounds
Wow.
from either a lead acid or lithium ion battery. So, yeah, the capabilities are just mind blowing when you think about that. So, yes,
Amazing.
our Tracked Easy, which is a little bit unique, is it can operate both indoors and outdoors. So we have some clients, for example, that have this tow tractor just moving directly within the warehouse, just moving uh, product and material from one side of the building to the other. Think, for example, down a warehouse or down a assembly line.
Yeah.
But other locations, it can go both indoors to outdoors, and we can definitely talk about that later. But
Yeah.
industrial sites, logistics centers, and even obviously airports, where the product was also designed for, is what the Tracked Easy does. And then the really exciting thing, just to finish on, is it is designed to run 24/7. So we can set up opportunity charging for the lithium battery ones, or battery swaps for lead acid. And we are working in a consortium in Europe as well, H2020, to ensure that all weather conditions are something that we can operate in. Side
Good.
note, we can definitely operate in the majority of weather conditions today, but when we're talking heavy, heavy rain, heavy, heavy snow, that is just a challenge for autonomous industry today. So it's something that we can do, but we're learning and being able to do better. So, for example, if it was a rainstorm, our vehicle may go a bit slower as it tries to filter out the difference between rainfall and different obstacles.
Mhm.
Just as a side note for the industry,
No, I think
um,
that that's great, but you're also working on that too, right? Like you're collaborating with other people in this space to make sure that that's not something that could be a challenge in the future. And I like the fact that you also talked about charging, because I was going to ask you, what does that look like? Do you have charging stations, so when it just like drives through it kind of charges, or do they have to stop and charge? And like you said, there's a battery function. But what you were talking about in the warehouse as well, like it can go from a picker to a packaging station, right? And so that picker doesn't need to leave that section of the warehouse to be able to get that product over to the packaging section so that they can get the product out, which I think is an awesome, awesome use case. And I think the other thing that you mentioned is that you can be Easy Mile, can be a huge component of somebody's sustainability plan, in being able to help with some of those CO2 emissions from some of the vehicles that they're traditionally used to using. And so if you're looking at your sustainability plan and trying to figure out what that can look like or what can replace, you know um, certain vehicles that you're already using to make CO2 emissions be reduced. And so you can put that as a part of your marketing as well, to be able to let your customers know that you're working with companies like EasyMile to be able to help with that sustainability plan and be part of that planet initiative, which we're all talking a lot about, which you mentioned previously as well.
definitely,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and so one of the other questions is around implementation, right? So when we think about technology, we think about this like robust implementation. So what does that mean? Because your vehicle solutions are supported by a set of services, and you can help with implementation, integration, training, all the technical aspects. So how tell us what that looks like. Is it a long implementation? Is it easy? Is the training fairly easy? And how do the employees react to your solutions?
Absolutely. Well, everything at Easy is Easy Mile, right? It kind of
Yeah.
goes within the name of the company. No, sorry, that was bad. But I will say that in order for us to be a sustainable company, and that's us sustainable, we need to ensure that we train as much as possible the end client in order to work with, deal with, and maintain one of our products. So we're committed to having as light a footprint as possible after the initial deployment. So
Mhm.
whether that comes to training you on or training the end client on fully maintaining the vehicle, which is key, to actually setting up your own routes. So once you've got familiar with the technology and we've trained you in order to effectively use it, you can then essentially deal with this as you want. So we will give you the keys to run with as much as possible, which I just think is so key when you come to these type of vehicles, and especially AGVs. A lot of vendors will just be, saying, "This is our vehicle. We'll set it up, and if you need anything done to it, we'll fly back and deal with it." But
Mhm.
the reality is, on some of these plants that operate 24/7, you can't wait week, 2 weeks for a
Mhm.
deployment engineer to come out onto site in order to set it up, maintain it, fix it, do whatever. So it's just not sustainable for us, and we wouldn't be in business in a few years if that was the model that we had.
Sure.
I'm speaking to you today from our North American headquarters here in Denver, and there's a team of about 20 people here. And to support all of our deployments, yeah, it doesn't make sense not to train that end user as much as possible. So, yes, we provide all of the training, all of the integrations, and those integrations can come from a fleet of APIs as well. So, say, for example, you have your own fleet management software, you have your own warehouse management software, you name it. We can provide you the APIs of our vehicle position, what it's doing, so it can implement and integrate into your system. Alternatively, we've also deployed in areas where maybe we don't have any vehicles running, but you want our fleet management software. That's something
Mhm.
as well that we can do and we have done with clients around the world as possible. But yes, when it comes to the set of services and everything that we do as a business, our job is to train that end client to be as fully self sufficient as possible.
Awesome, and it's easy. And what kind of reaction do you get from their employees when you implement something like this?
So twofold. I'd say on the passenger side, um, if somebody was, for example, to ride in one of our shuttles, within the first 5-10 minutes, it's fascinating. Everyone's got their phones out, they're recording everything, saying, "Look,
Right.
there's no driver," all this type of stuff. But after that initial excitement, it's just immediately people know they're very familiar with the concept because it's traveling relatively slowly. It's
Yeah.
very smooth. It's very safe. People get bored of it almost immediately, which is exactly what you want. You don't want anybody getting on a bus thinking this is a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
So that's more on the passenger side. I'd say on industry, where we've deployed at warehouses and manufacturing plants, honestly, it's just this is the norm now. There's no real like, wow, this is incredible because AGVs have been around for so long, so people are used to things driving without a operator or something uh, driving. Essentially,
Mhm.
I'd say the only difference with this is there is a steering wheel, there are brake pedals, accelerator pedals, so it does look a little bit strange initially because it
Mhm.
is a vehicle that's not is operating. But we have obviously flashing lights, and it clearly there's stickers and everything on it that says this is an autonomous vehicle. But it kind of goes back to that conversation we were having earlier about the site visit report and the site assessment report. There is a lot of work that goes into the ramp up to a deployment. So, kind of maybe we'll have like a public outreach campaign or something, letting employees know in a warehouse that, hey, we're going to be operating this autonomous shuttle or this autonomous tow tractor, just be aware. So there's a lot that we can do before the vehicles have actually even got there on
Yeah.
site to have that initial deployment not be this is crazy kind of thing.
Right. Well, and I bet that they're just happy, right? Because it makes their job so much easier, right? And they can do things a lot more efficient and they can do things a lot faster as well. And so that's one of the things that I like to hear as well. So do you have an ideal client when it comes to your solutions? We've talked about all sorts of different sectors from factories to airports. What would you say is your ideal client if I'm sitting in the audience wondering whether to pick up the phone and call you?
So a client that's interested in cost savings and efficiencies, a client that's interested in that push to a fully electric or reduced emissions type environment. Firstly, they have to have that kind of mindset in order to want to engage in a project that would involve one of our solutions. I'd say they're the two kind of overarching prerequisites.
Okay.
Other than that, you know, the main premise of the Tracked Easy, one of its biggest selling points, is essentially being able to move things from one building to another, as it's probably done today, whether it's with a tractor trailer type operation or, like we were saying earlier, with single forklift operations. Something where, yes, we have that need to use essentially an outdoor AGV.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, having a continual flow, so a 24/7 type operation is great because then we can really start showing some of those return on investments probably a lot sooner than other types of operations.
Mhm.
I'd say today, the type of industries where we're operating, just to kind of give you a sense, we're operating within many automotive plants. We've got a few beverage locations, and then the pharmaceutical industry are another one that we're operating. We're looking to move into aviation, but that's similar to what we're doing at automotive as well.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. And then another type thing to consider is the drivers and workers can be shifted into more of a value-added tasks. So the key thing that we're looking to do is help actually with the shortages in plants. So we're able to then move those people that essentially were doing the meaningless jobs of transporting things from one side to another or short type operations. We can actually use those employees at much more critical functions within a plant.
Awesome. Awesome. And you have an entire section on your website dedicated to success stories, which I love because we're coming to my favorite question. Why don't you paint us a picture of how you've helped one of your customers, right? So, what was their challenge? What was your solution? And what was the impact to their business?
Okay, so let's take the automotive plant that we've got here in the US in the Midwest. They are essentially moving engines directly from one building, the powertrain facility where they create them, and they need to move those engines directly to the assembly line. Today, they have a manned diesel type tow tractor, which honestly, they have struggled so much with driver retention because, in the nicest possible way, it's such a boring job. It's the same route constantly, day in, day out, 24/7 type operations, and it's about a mile and a half full loop. So yeah, to actually have get those engines from one building directly to the assembly line to keep the drivers, to train the drivers, because obviously this is a major plant as well. So you can't just rock up and then start driving. There's a huge ramp
Right.
up period, training, all of that type of stuff. So the challenge was essentially they need to move those goods fully autonomously for flow optimization. So we started speaking with them back in 2019, and we're obviously now there with three vehicles. But the conversation really spoke about how can the Tract Easy, this indoor-outdoor autonomous material handler, operate not only in the weather conditions that we have here, because they have all four seasons. It's a
Mhm.
continuous flow. So how do we make sure that we can set up opportunity charging so we don't have to take the vehicle offline and plug it in? It can just essentially, as it does today, it rolls over this opportunity charging plate as
Ah,
part of the flow built in, and it's charging about a percent every minute. And every loop it makes, it loses about 6 to 7% charge. So essentially, it just constantly runs at 100% before each run, which is great. Um, and yeah, I mean, the impact, it's been about 18 months and we've already got a return on investment, which
nice.
is just, yeah, which was, again, one of the key prerequisites for the flow. But for us, and able to do that and build that in as quickly as we have done has been a huge win, I think, for the business and for all of us. Um, the optimization for cost and flow has been key. And yeah, to now have those employees that were driving the tow tractors actually now at critical functions within the supply chain is just, yeah, I think that's been a huge win for us. So yeah, that's a great use case. And with that client, we're hopefully going to be able to be in a position to talk much more freely about it in a few months. So yeah,
Awesome.
very excited to be able to talk about that more.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, 18 months to full ROI. I mean, that's
Yeah.
amazing, especially on an investment like this. And just thinking about all the efficiencies that you created from start to finish and the opportunity charger. I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. I didn't know it was an actual thing, so I'm glad I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up. So, finally, we are at the end of this interview, and I think you and I could talk for a long time about all of this. But what does the future hold for both EasyMile and for the landscape of autonomous vehicle solutions?
Sure. So, as for a company, as for EasyMile, like I think we were saying at the start, we have just raised $66 million dollars in April. So that is able to position us to basically complete our product roadmap and technology whilst accelerating our international expansion and basically give clients exactly what they need. Um, our CEO has fundamentally said that it helps continue our growth trajectory. And yeah, it's something that we're ready to bring a lot more products into the commercialization
Awesome.
aspect and continue to kind of leverage the strengths of what we've done on the passenger side and on the material handling side. within the autonomous outdoor AGV type industry, there is eventually going to be tighter competition. So for us to be able to have more use cases, for us to be able to get to product faster, is definitely going to be key. So working with our manufacturing partners, and then just yeah, keep delivering our solutions in a flexible way. Every client is different. Every use case, every need for our solution comes with its own different challenges. So being able to answer all of those, and then having that continual, safety never stops. It's something that we always have to continue to refine. The stuff that we always learn when it comes to new
Mhm.
sites, and then that feeds back into the product roadmap. And then, yeah, just continually being that cost-effective leader for all of our clients in the answer for automated solutions.
Well, I cannot wait. I mean, from what we've talked about today, I mean, your roadmap and the future at EasyMile just seems so exciting. And I can't wait to watch what you're going to do. I mean, what an incredible business, right? Honestly, when I started Let's Talk Supply Chain a few years ago, I never thought I would be talking about fully operational driverless vehicles in 2021. I mean, it's so impressive. The potential for your technology is just incredible. And this conversation has me really excited to see what else you guys have in store and what the future will bring for all of us. Thank you so much to the team at EasyMile for making this possible. And thank you to Joe for joining us on the show today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.